The world was burning, but Kaelen Vance couldn't feel the heat. He lay on the shattered remnants of what used to be the Aegis Citadel. The last bastion of humanity, staring up at a sky that had been torn open like a bleeding wound. Through the jagged cosmic rift, colossal, indifferent eyes stared back down at the ruined Earth. The Constellations, the gods of the system. For 10 years, Kaelen had served them. He had embraced the title of arch-villain, the betrayer of humanity, the Shadow Monarch. He had slaughtered guilds, collapsed economies, and personally hunted down the only man who could have saved them all, Leonidas, the hero of light. Kaelen coughed, black blood spilling from his lips, staining the pristine white feathers of the broken angel wings scattered around him. He had won. He had defeated the hero, plunging the sword of absolute darkness through Leonidas's heart just hours ago. He had offered the world to the Constellations, expecting the ultimate reward, godhood, salvation for the few he cared about. Instead, the system announced a harvest. The Constellations didn't want to rule humanity, they wanted to consume it. They fed on the accumulated mana of the dead. Kaelen hadn't been their champion. He had been their farmer, fattening up the livestock before the slaughter. "I was a fool," Kaelen rasped, his voice barely a whisper against the roaring winds of the apocalypse. A holographic blue screen materialized before his fading eyes. "Notice, user Kaelen Vance has suffered catastrophic essence damage. Time to death, 14 seconds. System," Kaelen muttered, his fingers digging into the ash-covered earth. "Is there a rollback feature, an undo button for absolute idiots?" "Notice, command unrecognized. The harvest is 99% complete. Thank you for your service, player Kaelen." Rage, cold, and absolute eclipsed the pain in Kaelen's chest. He had killed the one man who never gave up. Leonidas had looked at Kaelen with pity, even with a blade in his heart. "It's not too late for you, Kaelen," the hero had said with his dying breath. "You stupid, naive, golden-haired idiot," Kaelen choked out, tears of blood tracking down his pale face. "You were right, you were always right, if I had just stood by your side instead of in your shadow." Time to death, 3 seconds. Kaelen closed his eyes, accepting the void. But then a different sound chimed in his mind, not the cold, mechanical voice of the system, but a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through his very soul. Hidden condition met, absolute remorse of a world-class entity. Title the ultimate betrayer is reacting with Title the regretful shadow. Error, unauthorized interference detected in the soul matrix. Initiating protocol, Ouroboros, rewinding the clock. Penalty, resetting all physical stats to level 1. Kaelen's eyes snapped open just as the world around him shattered like glass. The burning sky, the cosmic eyes, the ash, it all dissolved into a blinding vortex of pure white light. The sensation of falling overwhelmed him, pulling him down into an endless abyss. And then he slammed into a hard surface. Kaelen gasped, his lungs expanding violently as he inhaled the scent of polished wood, old paper, and cheap instant coffee. He shot up from a desk, sending a stack of manila folders scattering across the floor. He was hyperventilating, his hands frantically patting his chest, searching for the gaping hole that was no longer there. His skin was intact. His breathing was normal. He looked around wildly. He was in a small, cramped office. Sunlight, real, warm, uncorrupted sunlight, was streaming through a narrow window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Outside, he could hear the distant sound of teenagers laughing, the clash of wooden practice swords, and the hum of everyday life. When, Kaelen muttered, scrambling for his smartphone on the desk. He turned it on. The lock screen stared back at him. August 14th, 2024, exactly 15 years before the harvest. Kaelen collapsed back into his cheap office chair, his hands covering his face as a manic, breathless laugh escaped his lips. 15 years. He had returned to the exact day before the awakening ceremony. At the Seoul International Hunter Academy. The day the system descended on the general populace, turning ordinary students into superpowered hunters. "I'm back," he whispered, the reality crashing over him. "I'm really back." He immediately summoned his status window. Name, Kaelen Vance, class, unawakened, pending, level 1. His stats were garbage. He was physically weaker than an average gym-goer. However, as his eyes scrolled down, a terrifying smile stretched across his face. Retained skills, passive, absolute shadow mastery, max level. The system had stripped his raw power, but it couldn't erase his memories, his technique, or his mastery over the shadows. He still had the mind and the skills of the arch-villain who had brought the world to its knees. But this time he wasn't going to destroy the world. He walked over to the small mirror hanging on the back of his office door. He looked younger. "This time," Kaelen said to his reflection, his voice dropping an octave, losing all its warmth, "I will protect him. I will stand in the shadows and slaughter every single god, monster, and human who dares to look at him the wrong way. I will forge the hero of light into a weapon so sharp it cuts the heavens." If you are enjoying the story so far and want to see how this corrupted mentor turns the righteous hero into a total menace, make sure to hit that subscribe button and welcome to the Fate Library. Drop a like, and let's get back to the shadows. The next morning, the grand courtyard of the Hunter Academy was buzzing with nervous energy. Thousands of students were lined up, waiting to touch the awakening stone, a massive, glowing obsidian monolith that would dictate their futures. Kaelen stood on the instructor's balcony, his arms crossed, his dark eyes scanning the crowd. He wasn't looking at the scions of wealthy guilds or the arrogant prodigies who were currently showing off. He was looking for one specific boy. And there he was, Leonidas right, Leon. Even at 17, the boy stood out. He had messy blonde hair, bright, determined blue eyes, and a posture that screamed, "I want to help people." In the previous timeline, Leon had awakened the mythic class, Holy Sword, right here, instantly propelling him to global stardom and placing a massive target on his back. But before Leon could shine, he had to deal with the pests. Down in the courtyard, 3 seniors approached Leon. Kaelen recognized them instantly. The leader, a burly kid named Marcus, was the son of a major guild master. "Hey, charity case," Marcus sneered, shoving Leon's shoulder. "You really think a nobody orphan like you is going to awaken anything better than a D-rank porter? Get out of the way. You're blocking the sun." Leon stumbled but quickly regained his footing, his jaw set. "The line is first come, first served, Marcus. I'm not moving." "Oh, really?" Marcus cracked his knuckles, his 2 lackeys stepping up beside him. "Maybe I need to teach you a lesson before the stone does." Up on the balcony, the other instructors sighed. "Should we intervene?" one of them asked. "Let them be," a senior instructor replied lazily. "The strong eat the weak, it's the law of hunters. Better the kid learns it now." Kaelen didn't say a word, he simply vanished. Down in the courtyard, Marcus pulled back his fist, ready to punch Leon square in the jaw. Leon raised his arms to block, bracing for impact, but the punch never landed. Suddenly, a hand, pale, slender, but gripping like a titanium vice, clamped around Marcus's wrist. Marcus blinked, looking to his side. Instructor Kaelen had seemingly materialized out of thin air. The instructor's face was completely blank, his dark eyes devoid of any emotion. "Instructor," Marcus scoffed, trying to yank his arm back. He couldn't budge an inch. It felt like his wrist was bolted to a mountain. "Let go. I was just teaching this brat some manners." Kaelen leaned in close, his voice a soft, silken whisper that only Marcus could hear. "Marcus," Kaelen said, "did you know there's a cluster of nerves right below the radius bone? If pressure is applied at exactly the right angle, it doesn't just cause pain. It permanently damages the mana pathways in the arm." Marcus frowned, confused and slightly unnerved. "What are you talking ob?" Snap. It wasn't a loud noise, but Marcus felt it reverberate through his entire skeleton. A blinding, white-hot agony shot up his arm, radiating directly into his brain. He opened his mouth to scream, but Kaelen's other hand shot up, his fingers digging into a pressure point on Marcus's neck. Instantly paralyzing his vocal cords, Marcus collapsed to his knees, his face turning purple, tears streaming down his face in silent, choking agony. Kaelen looked down at him with a gentle, terrifying smile. "Oh dear," Kaelen said loudly, letting go of the boy and stepping back. "It seems student Marcus has suffered a sudden cramp from pre-awakening anxiety. Someone take him to the infirmary. He won't be participating today." Leon stood there, utterly bewildered. He looked from the retreating bullies to Kaelen. "Instructor Vance?" Leon asked, his voice shaking slightly. What did you do?" Kaelen turned to the future savior of the world. He adjusted his glasses, offering a pristine, professional smile. "I simply provided medical assistance, Leonidas. Now I believe it is your turn at the stone." The awakening went exactly as Kaelen remembered. When Leon touched the obsidian monolith, the sky itself seemed to part. A pillar of blinding, golden light erupted from the stone, piercing the clouds and bathing the entire academy in a warm, divine aura. The holographic screens above the courtyard went haywire, numbers scrolling so fast they blurred before finally landing on a single, glowing notification. Student Leonidas right, class, Holy Swordmaster Mythic. Potential, unmeasurable silence fell over the courtyard. Instructors dropped their clipboards. Students gaped in open-mouthed shock. A mythic class, it was a 1 in a billion occurrence. The entire world was going to want this boy. Guilds would offer billions, politicians would try to groom him, and assassins from rival nations would be dispatched by nightfall. Leon pulled his hand back, looking at his glowing palms in disbelief. He looked up at the balcony, searching for guidance, and his eyes locked onto Kaelen. Kaelen gave him a slow, deliberate nod. The chaos erupted seconds later. Recruiters stormed the courtyard, news helicopters began circling overhead, and the academy principal was screaming into his phone. But Kaelen didn't stick around. He turned and walked back to his office. He had exactly 3 hours before the government agents arrived to take Leon into protective custody, which was really just a fancy term for brainwashing him into becoming a state-sponsored weapon. Kaelen sat at his desk and waited. 2 hours and 50 minutes later, there was a frantic knock on his door. Before Kaelen could answer, the door swung open. Leon stood there, panting heavily, his uniform disheveled. He had literally run away. From the swarm of VIPs and guild masters. "Instructor Vance," Leon gasped, closing the door and locking it behind him. "They're crazy. Everyone is going crazy. They're offering me money, cars, islands. I don't know what to do." Kaelen laced his fingers together, resting his chin on his hands. "And why did you come to me, Leon? I am a junior instructor. My highest recorded combat stat is a measly C rank." Leon hesitated, looking down at his hands. "Because of what you did to Marcus. I saw your eyes, instructor. Everyone else looks at me like a winning lottery ticket. But you looked at me like you knew exactly who I was before the stone even glowed, and you fight different." "Different?" Kaelen raised an eyebrow. "You didn't use mana to stop Marcus," Leon said, his intuition flaring. "You used technique, precision. You won the fight without even throwing a punch. I want to learn that. I have all this power now. But I don't know how to survive the people trying to use me. Please, Instructor Vance, take me as your disciple." Kaelen's lips twitched. He had him. "To be my disciple, Leonidas, means abandoning the path of a traditional hero," Kaelen said, his voice turning icy and deadly serious. "The world expects you to stand in the light, to fight honorably. To declare your name before crossing swords. If you train under me, you will not do that." Leon swallowed hard, his posture straightening. "What will I do?" Kaelen reached into his desk drawer. He pulled out a heavy leather pouch and tossed it onto the desk. It landed with a dull, metallic thud. "Open it," Kaelen commanded. Leon stepped forward and uncinched the pouch. He frowned, reaching inside and pulling out a handful of finely milled grayish powder, mixed with small, sharp iron filings. "What is this?" Leon asked, expecting a magical artifact or a beginner's holy text. "Is this some kind of alchemy ingredient?" "That," Kaelen said with a perfectly straight face, "is grade A, magically reinforced pocket sand." Leon stared at him, utterly lost. "Pocket sand?" "Yes," Kaelen stood up, walking around the desk. "The Holy Swordmaster class grants you immense power, durability, and a glowing aura. You are a walking beacon of righteousness, which makes you incredibly predictable." Kaelen stepped into Leon's personal space, his aura of absolute shadow slightly leaking out, dropping the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. "Imagine this, Leon," Kaelen whispered. "An A-rank demon lord charges at you. He expects a clash of blades. He expects a heroic speech. He expects a fair fight. Instead, you throw a handful of iron filings directly into his unblinking, demonic eyes." Leon's jaw dropped. "But isn't that dishonorable?" "Dishonor means you're alive to feel embarrassed about it," Kaelen snapped, his eyes flashing red for a fraction of a second. "Honor is a luxury for the dead. The monsters out there will not fight fair. The humans who want to steal your power will not fight fair. So you, the beacon of hope, will fight dirtier than all of them combined." Kaelen grabbed a small, black throwing dart from the pouch and pressed it into Leon's hand. "This dart is coated in paralyzing wyvern venom," Kaelen explained smoothly. While the demon lord is screaming and trying to clear the sand from his eyes, you slip this dart between the plates of his armor. Then, when he is paralyzed, blind, and confused, you use your ultimate holy sword technique to cut his head off from behind. Leon stared at the dart, then at the pouch of sand, and finally at his instructor. A strange, twisted logic was beginning to click in his naive brain. He was realizing that Kaelen wasn't teaching him how to fight. Kaelen was teaching him how to win. "It's efficient," Leon mumbled, a small, slightly unhinged smile creeping onto his face. Kaelen felt a swell of dark pride in his chest. "Yes, my boy, let the corruption flow." "Exactly efficiency," Kaelen lied smoothly, rebranding villainous assassination tactics as righteous pragmatism. A true hero minimizes risk to himself to better protect others. Now, put the sand in your left pocket. We have exactly 20 minutes before the government agents break down my door. It is time for your first lesson in tactical retreat. "Tactical retreat?" Leon asked, securing the pouch. "Yes," Kaelen said, walking to the window and unlatching it. "We are going to jump out of this third-story window, steal the principal's personal monocar, and flee the city before sunset. We will head into the C-rank wastelands. There, I will teach you the art of the preemptive strike, ambush tactics, and how to effectively loot a corpse." Leon didn't even hesitate. The boy who was destined to be the shining beacon of humanity walked up to the window and looked down at the sheer drop. "Do I throw the sand at the driver when we steal the car?" Leon asked genuinely. Kaelen grinned, a genuine, terrifying smile of a supervillain who had just found the perfect apprentice. "Only if he resists, Leon, only if he resists. And that is where we are ending Chapter 1. If you want to see how the world reacts to the holy hero becoming a literal menace who fights like a street thug, make sure to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the Fate Library. See you in the next chapter." "Instructor Vance?" Leon asked, his voice barely audible over the roaring engine of the stolen vehicle. "Is the principal going to be mad that we took his car?" Kaelen smoothly shifted gears, sending the sleek, black, government-issued monocar drifting around a tight corner on the outskirts of Seoul. The tires shrieked in protest, leaving thick black streaks on the asphalt. "Leonidas," Kaelen said, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "The principal is currently dealing with the Prime Minister, 3 guild masters, and likely a covert Black Ops team that wants to kidnap you. I assure you, a stolen sedan is the absolute least of his worries right now." Leon sank lower into the luxurious leather passenger seat. Clutching his seatbelt like a lifeline, he looked down at his own glowing hands. The residual golden energy of the mythic class was still humming just beneath his skin, making him feel like a battery charged with too much electricity. "They really want to kidnap me?" Leon asked, his naive worldview fracturing a little more with every passing mile. "They don't want you, Leon. They want the holy sword," Kaelen corrected him, glancing at the rearview mirror to ensure they weren't being followed. "In the eyes of the government, you are no longer a 17-year-old orphan. You are a strategic nuclear deterrent. If another country gets their hands on you, the balance of global power shifts. Therefore, if the Korean government can't convince you to join them willingly, they will throw you in a golden cage. Brainwash you with patriotism and point you at their enemies." Leon swallowed hard. The romanticized idea of being a hunter, fighting monsters, saving civilians, being a hero, was evaporating rapidly. In its place was a cold, terrifying reality. "So what's our plan?" Leon asked, his voice steadying. "Where are we going?" "The C-rank wastelands," Kaelen replied smoothly, pressing the accelerator to the floor as they blew past the city limits and onto the ruined highway. "The authorities will search the high-end guild facilities, the safe houses, and the airports. They will never expect the most valuable asset in the world to willingly walk into a zone crawling with mutated beasts on his very first day." Leon nodded, accepting the logic. Then he paused. "Wait, C-rank. Instructor, I'm level 1. You said your combat stats are C-rank at best. Aren't we going to die?" Kaelen let out a dark, raspy chuckle. That made the hairs on the back of Leon's neck stand up. "Death, my boy, is an occupational hazard. But rest assured, we are not going to fight C-rank monsters today." Leon let out a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank God, we're just hiding there, right?" "No," Kaelen smiled, a wide, terrifying expression. "We are going to massacre them." Back at the Hunter Academy, absolute chaos reigned. A team of men in sharp black suits, wearing earpieces and carrying high-tech monosuppression rifles, kicked down the door to instructor Kaelen Vance's office. The leader of the squad, a grim-faced man with a scar over his left eye, swept the room with his rifle raised. "Clear," he barked. The other agents filed in, tearing the small office apart. Drawers were yanked open, files were scattered. And the computer was immediately confiscated by a tech specialist. "Sir," an agent called out from the window. "The latch is broken. Looks like they went out this way." The squad leader stormed over, looking down the 3-story drop. "Are you telling me a junior instructor and an unawakened kid jumped out of a 3rd-story window?" "The kid isn't unawakened anymore, sir," the agent reminded him nervously. "He's a mythic." The squad leader cursed under his breath, tapping his earpiece. "Command, this is Strike Team Alpha. The package is gone. I repeat, the Holy Sword has vanished. Suspected kidnapping by a faculty member. Name, Kaelen Vance. I want a full background check on this guy right now." A moment later, a voice crackled in his ear. "Sir, we pulled his file. It's completely unremarkable. D-rank mana capacity. C-rank combat efficiency. No criminal record, no guild affiliations, no overseas travel. He's practically a ghost in the system. The most boring man in Korea." Boring men don't kidnap mythic awakeners from under the noses of the entire government, the squad leader snarled. "Put every satellite on the city. Lock down the borders. Find that kid before the Americans or the Chinese realize he's missing. If you're loving the dynamic between our cynical villain and the naive hero, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Fate Library. We have a lot more corrupt lessons coming up." The C-rank wastelands used to be a sprawling industrial district on the outskirts of Seoul, before the first dungeon break 15 years ago. Now it was a desolate expanse of rusted factories, shattered concrete, and overgrown, toxic vegetation. The sky here always looked bruised, painted in sickly shades of purple and gray due to the dense mana pollution. Kaelen parked the stolen monocar inside an abandoned warehouse, killing the engine. The sudden silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant, unnatural howling of monsters. "Get out," Kaelen ordered. Stepping out of the car and popping the trunk, Leon stepped out, his sneakers crunching on broken glass. He looked around nervously, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of the wooden practice sword he had grabbed before they jumped out the window. It felt woefully inadequate. "First lesson," Kaelen said, tossing a heavy tactical backpack at Leon. Leon caught it with a grunt. "Status windows, open yours." Leon blinked, focusing his mind. A glowing golden screen materialized in front of him. Name, Leonidas right, class, Holy Swordmaster Mythic. Level 1 Strength, 50 Agility, 45 Vitality, 60 Intelligence, 30. "Read me your stats," Kaelen instructed, pulling a sleek black combat knife from his own boot. Leon read the numbers out loud. When he finished, he looked up, expecting Kaelen to be disappointed. Instead, Kaelen just sighed. 50 Strength at level 1, Kaelen muttered, rubbing his temples. For context, Leon, the average adult human, has a strength stat of 10. A standard C-rank hunter, someone who has been fighting for years, usually caps out around 40. You are stronger, faster, and tougher than 90% of the active hunters in this country, and you haven't even killed a slime yet. Leon's eyes widened, looking down at his hands again. I am. Yes, but stats are just numbers. A moron with a rocket launcher is still a moron, and he will eventually blow himself up. Kaelen said, walking towards the exit of the warehouse. "Follow me, stay in my shadow, and do not make a sound." They moved silently through the ruins. Kaelen's movements were terrifyingly fluid. He didn't just walk, he seemed to glide. His footsteps making absolutely zero noise on the debris-littered ground. He utilized his max-level, complete concealment, passive, masking his presence so thoroughly that Leon felt like he was following a ghost. After 10 minutes of tense navigation, Kaelen raised a fist, signaling Leon to stop. They crouched behind a rusted-out bus, looking down into a sunken plaza. Below them, a pack of 6 blood wolves was tearing into the carcass of a mutated deer. The wolves were the size of small cars, their fur matted with dried blood, their eyes glowing a sickly red. Bone-like spikes protruded from their spines. Monster Blood Wolf, rank C. Leon gripped his wooden sword so hard his knuckles turned white. Instructor, there are 6 of them if we fight them head-on. If you fight them head-on, you will die, Kaelen interrupted smoothly. They hunt in packs, they coordinate. If you swing at one, the other 5 will tear your throat out from behind. A traditional hero would jump down there, shout a war cry, and rely on his overpowered stats to survive. It's stupid, it's reckless, and it ruins your clothes. So, what do we do? Leon asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. We cheat, Kaelen stated simply. Kaelen pointed to a massive, crumbling concrete pillar that supported a precarious overhang of steel girders directly above the feeding wolves. Do you see that support pillar? Kaelen asked. Leon nodded. Your mythic class grants you an innate skill called Holy Aura, correct? Leon checked his status window and nodded again. Yes. It says it coats my weapon in divine light, increasing cutting power by 300%. Excellent, Kaelen said. Here is the plan. I am going to circle around to the other side of the plaza. I will throw a rock to distract them. When they look away, you will activate your holy aura. Run silently to that pillar and slice right through the base of it. Leon's eyes widened as the realization hit him. You want me to drop the roof on them? I want you to introduce them to the concept of gravity. Yes, Kaelen smirked. Why fight 6 C-rank monsters when you can let 100 tons of steel and concrete do the work for you? Leon hesitated, but isn't that cowardly? Kaelen slowly turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto Leon with a chilling intensity. The temperature seemed to drop again. Leonidas, Kaelen whispered, his voice dripping with venom. Do you think those wolves care about bravery? Do you think the demons that will eventually invade this world care about honor? If you die because you wanted a fair fight, the people you were meant to protect will die too. Your pride is not worth their lives. Are you a hero, or are you an actor looking for applause? The words struck Leon like a physical blow. The naive, romanticized ideas he had harbored for years shattered completely. Kaelen wasn't just being pragmatic, he was stripping away Leon's ego. Leon looked back down at the wolves, then at the pillar. His jaw hardened. He reached into his pocket, his fingers brushing against the pouch of magically reinforced sand. I'm a hero, Leon said softly, his voice losing its tremor. Good, Kaelen nodded, the chilling aura vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Now get ready. Kaelen vanished into the shadows, moving with impossible speed. A minute later, a heavy chunk of concrete shattered against a rusted car on the far side of the plaza. The blood wolves snapped their heads up, snarling, their red eyes locking onto the source of the noise. Now Kaelen's voice echoed in Leon's mind, a byproduct of his shadow mastery. Leon moved. He didn't shout, he didn't hesitate. He poured his mana into the wooden practice sword. The cheap wood instantly erupted in a blinding, golden light, humming like a lightsaber. He dashed toward the pillar, his level 50 agility propelling him forward faster than a sports car. Before the wolves could even register his presence, Leon swung the glowing wooden sword in a massive horizontal arc. The holy aura cut through the thick concrete and steel rebar like a hot knife through butter. Leon didn't stop to admire his work. He kept running, diving behind a reinforced blast wall just as the pillar collapsed. The sound was deafening. The entire overhang groaned, buckled, and then slammed down into the plaza with the force of an earthquake. A massive cloud of dust and debris billowed up, obscuring everything. The agonizing howls of the crushed wolves echoed for a brief second before being silenced completely. Leon crouched behind the wall, coughing on the dust, his heart pounding in his ears. Ding! A rapid succession of system notifications flooded his vision. You have slain a C-rank blood wolf. You have slain a C-rank blood wolf. You have slain a C-rank blood wolf. Experience points gained. Level up, level up, level up. You have reached level 7. Leon stared at the glowing blue screens in absolute shock. He had just jumped from level 1 to level 7 in 5 seconds. He hadn't taken a single scratch. He hadn't even swung his sword at an actual enemy. Hidden achievement unlocked. The Pragmatic Hunter. Description: you have defeated enemies significantly stronger than you using environmental hazards and ambush tactics instead of direct combat. Reward: skill, cold calculation, passive. Increases critical hit chance by 15% when attacking from stealth. Kaelen dropped down from a nearby ledge, landing soundlessly beside Leon. He casually dusted off his suit jacket. "Well done," Kaelen said, a genuine smile on his face. "Minimal effort. Maximum reward. That is the essence of my teachings." Leon looked at the system prompts, a slightly manic grin spreading across his face. "Instructor, that was amazing." "Don't celebrate yet," Kaelen warned, pulling his combat knife again. As the dust began to settle, a low, guttural growl vibrated through the ruined plaza. From beneath the rubble of the fallen roof, a massive shape forced its way out, tossing aside a 2-ton steel girder like it was made of cardboard. It was the alpha wolf. It was twice the size of the others, its fur matted with its own blood, one of its eyes crushed, and its back left leg clearly broken. But it was still alive, and it was furious. Monster alpha blood wolf injured, rank C+. Lesson 2, Kaelen said, his voice cold and analytical. The double tap. Leon stood up, gripping his glowing wooden sword. The double tap. "Never ever leave an enemy alive, Leonidas," Kaelen instructed, pointing at the struggling, enraged alpha. "A wounded enemy is a desperate enemy. A desperate enemy has nothing to lose. If you leave it to bleed out, it might survive. It might mutate. It might track you down 10 years from now and slaughter someone you care about while you sleep." Kaelen stepped back, crossing his arms. An honorable knight would put it out of its misery quickly. A villain would torture it. "You will simply ensure it never breathes again. Finish it. Safely." Leon nodded. He didn't charge in. He watched the alpha wolf struggle to stand on its broken leg. The beast roared, locking its remaining eye onto Leon, and lunged forward, jaws snapping. Leon didn't swing his sword. He didn't try to block the massive jaws. Instead, he reached into his left pocket, pulled out a handful of magically reinforced iron filings, and threw them directly into the alpha wolf's one good eye. The wolf shrieked in agony, its momentum faltering as it thrashed blindly, snapping at the air. While the beast was distracted, Leon calmly stepped to the side, raised his glowing wooden sword, and cleanly severed the wolf's head from its neck. The massive body slumped to the ground, twitching once before going completely still. "You have slain a C+ rank alpha blood wolf. Level up. You have reached level 8. Leon stood over the corpse, breathing heavily. He looked at the pocket sand in his hand, then at the decapitated monster, and finally at Kaelen. "Instructor," Leon said, a terrifyingly pragmatic glint in his blue eyes, "I think I need more sand." Kaelen threw his head back and laughed, a dark, rich sound that echoed through the wastelands. He had done it. He had successfully corrupted the Hero of Light in less than 24 hours. "We will get you all the sand you need, my boy," Kaelen smiled. But the smile faded a second later. Kaelen's max-level danger intuition flared violently. The hairs on his arms stood on end. He snapped his head toward the deep shadows of an adjoining alleyway. The scent of copper and ozone filled the air. The blood from the crushed wolves was seeping into the ground, and it had drawn something out from the deeper zones of the wasteland. A massive, grotesque figure stepped out of the shadows. It stood 10 feet tall, humanoid, but its skin was entirely replaced by shifting, razor-sharp metallic plates. It had no face, only a vertical slit that glowed with a toxic green light. "Monster, Iron Maiden Fiend, Mutant, rank B." A B-rank mutant. This wasn't supposed to be here. This was a zone for C-rank scavengers. Kaelen's hand tightened around his combat knife. He could kill it. Even at level 1, his taboo blood magic could shred it from the inside out. But doing so would drain his life force, and worse, it would show Leon his true, villainous nature too early. He looked at Leon. The boy was staring at the B-rank monstrosity, his hands trembling slightly, but his grip on the wooden sword remained firm. Kaelen made a split-second decision. This was the crucible. "Leonidas," Kaelen said, his voice cutting through the tension. "Time for your final exam for today." Leon swallowed hard, not taking his eyes off the towering metal beast. "You want me to fight that? It's made of metal. I have a wooden sword." "It's a B-rank," Kaelen said smoothly, taking a step back into the shadows. "Your holy aura can cut through steel. You have venom darts, you have sand, and you have an environment full of heavy, blunt objects." The Iron Maiden Fiend let out a screech that sounded like grinding metal and charged at Leon. "Don't die, Leon," Kaelen whispered, completely vanishing from sight. "I haven't even taught you how to use poison yet." "Oh man, the training wheels are completely off." How is a level 8 hero going to survive a B-rank mutant with just a wooden stick and pocket sand? Find out in Chapter 3. Drop a comment below predicting how Leon wins this, and make sure you subscribe to Fate Library so you don't miss the next upload. The C-rank wastelands echoed with the screeching sound of grinding metal as the Iron Maiden fiend charged. It was 10 feet of corrupted, razor-sharp steel, moving with a terrifying, unnatural speed. The toxic green light emanating from its vertical facial slit locked directly onto Leonidas. Leon stood his ground, the cheap wooden practice sword in his hand humming with the golden light of his mythic, holy aura. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Just hours ago, he was a student worrying about his academy finals. Now, he was facing down a B-rank mutant that could easily bisect a tank. "Don't die, Leon," Kaelen's voice echoed in his memory. Leon didn't just want to survive, he wanted to win. The adrenaline was afire in his veins, but thanks to his newly acquired, cold calculation passive skill, his mind was surprisingly clear. The panic was still there, but it felt distant, like he was watching the fight through a tactical lens. He analyzed the fiend as it closed the distance. The monster was heavily armored, its shifting metallic plates overlapping flawlessly to protect its core. A direct strike with a wooden sword, even empowered by holy aura, would likely just shatter the weapon and leave him defenseless. An honorable knight would clash blades, Leon thought, his grip tightening on the hilt. But I am not an honorable knight. The fiend lunged, swinging an arm that ended in a massive, jagged scythe blade. Leon didn't block, he dropped. Using his level 50 agility, Leon slid on the debris-littered concrete, passing directly beneath the massive scythe swing. The blade sheared through the top of a rusted car behind him, sending a shower of sparks into the air. As he slid past the fiend's legs, Leon didn't swing his sword. He reached into his pocket. He spun around, rising to his feet just as the fiend turned to face him again. "Hey, ugly," Leon shouted, his voice cracking slightly. The fiend let out another metallic shriek, its green ice-lit flaring as it locked onto his face. Perfect, Leon thought. He hurled a massive handful of magically reinforced iron filings directly into the fiend's vertical slit. The pocket sand, a mix of abrasive dirt and sharp metal, struck the creature's sensitive optical sensor. The fiend stumbled back, shrieking in a high-pitched, agonizing tone. It clawed at its own face, its metallic plates grinding together as it tried to clear the debris. Now, Leon muttered to himself. He didn't hesitate, he didn't give a speech. He drew the small, black throwing dart coated in paralyzing wyvern venom that Kaelen had given him. The fiend was thrashing wildly, leaving its guard wide open. As it threw its head back to scream, the overlapping plates around its thick neck separated for a fraction of a second, revealing the pulsing, fleshy, mutated tissue underneath. Leon poured every ounce of his remaining agility into a single leap. He vaulted off the hood of a crushed sedan, launching himself into the air. He didn't throw the dart. He jammed it directly into the exposed flesh of the fiend's neck like a dagger. The creature roared, its scythe arm swinging wildly, catching Leon in the ribs midair. Leon grunted as the blunt force threw him backward, sending him crashing into a pile of discarded tires. Pain flared through his side, but his vitality stat absorbed the worst of it. He scrambled back to his feet, gripping his glowing wooden sword. The fiend turned toward him, preparing to charge again, but it only took one step before its massive, metallic legs locked up. The wyvern venom was coursing through its veins. The creature shuddered violently, its joints stiffening, its green eye flickering wildly. It tried to lift its scythe arm, but the muscles underneath the armor were completely paralyzed. It was a sitting duck. Leon didn't waste the opportunity. He closed his eyes for a brief second, channeling every drop of his remaining mana into the wooden sword. The golden light intensified, turning into a blinding, radiant pillar that illuminated the desolate plaza. "Holy slash," Leon whispered. He swung the sword in a massive, two-handed vertical arc. A crescent of pure, concentrated holy energy erupted from the blade. It sailed through the air and slammed into the paralyzed fiend. The divine power bypassed the metallic armor entirely, detonating against the creature's dark core. The Iron Maiden fiend didn't even have time to scream. The golden energy tore it apart from the inside out. The metallic plates shattered, raining down like shrapnel, and the creature dissolved into a cloud of black ash. Silence fell over the plaza once again. Ding! You have slain a B-rank Iron Maiden fiend, mutant. Massive experience points gained. Level up, level up, level up, level up, level up. You have reached level 13. Hidden achievement unlocked, the David Protocol. Description: you have defeated an enemy 2 full ranks above you using minimal mana output and maximum environmental exploitation. Reward: stat boost +10 to intelligence. Skill: venom coating. Active: allows the user to imbue any weapon with a mild paralytic toxin for 60 seconds. Leon stood there, panting heavily, leaning on his wooden sword. He looked at the massive crater where the fiend had stood, then at the system prompts floating in his vision. "Instructor," Leon called out, his voice echoing in the empty plaza. "Did I pass?" From the shadows of a shattered billboard above him, Kaelen dropped down, landing without a sound. He walked over to Leon, inspecting the boy's bruised ribs and dusty uniform. Kaelen's face was unreadable for a moment. Then, a slow, dark smile spread across his lips. "You didn't just pass, Leonidas," Kaelen said, his voice filled with a twisted, genuine pride. "You excelled, pocket sand, a paralyzed target, and a killing blow from behind. You fought with the pragmatism of an assassin and the power of a god. The Constellations must be absolutely confused." "The Constellations?" Leon asked, wiping a smear of soot from his cheek. "The ones watching," Kaelen pointed up at the bruised sky. "The gods of the system. They expected a noble hero who trades blows and struggles against the darkness. Instead, they got a teenager who blinds monsters with dirt and shivs them while they're paralyzed. I imagine their ratings are plummeting right now." Leon chuckled, the adrenaline finally fading. "Good. If they want a show, they can watch someone else. I just want to survive." Kaelen nodded approvingly. "That is the mindset that will keep you alive. Come, we need to move." That holy slash was a beacon. Anyone with mana sense within 10 miles just felt it. The scavengers will be here soon, and the government won't be far behind. If you want to see Leon unlock even more incredibly illegal skills, and watch Kaelen mold him into the ultimate pragmatic menace, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Fate Library. We're just getting started. Meanwhile, 50 miles away, in the heart of Seoul's bustling guild district, the atmosphere inside the headquarters of the Silver Lions Guild was tense. The Silver Lions were the premier guild in the country, a massive organization that practically functioned as a private military. And right now, their guild master, a towering man named Varga, was staring at a holographic map of the city, his face a mask of barely contained fury. "You lost him," Varga said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. Across the mahogany desk stood the squad leader of the government strike team, looking incredibly uncomfortable. "Sir, we had the academy locked down, but this instructor, Kaelen Vance, he completely evaded our surveillance net. He took the principal's car, bypassed the toll scanners, and simply vanished off the grid." "A junior instructor," Varga scoffed, slamming his fist onto the desk, cracking the reinforced wood. "A nobody with C-rank combat stats kidnapped the holy sword from under the noses of the entire South Korean government. Do you know what this means? If a dark guild or a foreign power gets him, they have the ultimate weapon." "We are tracking the vehicle now, sir," the agent insisted. "Don't bother," a new voice cut through the tension. From the shadows in the corner of the office, a figure stepped forward. He was slender, wearing a form-fitting stealth suit that seemed to absorb the light around it. His face was hidden behind a smooth, featureless black mask. This was Silhouette, the Silver Lion's top tracker and assassin. An A-rank hunter who specialized in hunting down awakeners who went rogue. "The vehicle was found abandoned 10 minutes ago at the edge of the C-rank wastelands," Silhouette stated, his voice artificially modulated. "The tracker in the car was disabled." Varga looked at the assassin. "The wastelands? A level 1 mythic and a weak instructor walked into the wastelands. They're either dead or they have a death wish." "Unlikely," Silhouette replied, stepping closer to the holographic map and tapping a location. 5 minutes ago, the local mana monitoring station detected a massive spike in holy energy. A concentrated burst, indicative of a high-tier skill activation. It originated from Sector 4 of the Wastelands. Varga's eyes narrowed. He's alive and he's fighting. I will find them, Silhouette said, turning toward the door. If the boy is willing to cooperate, I will bring him back, if this Kaelen Vance resists. Kill the instructor, Varga ordered coldly. Bring me the boy intact. Silhouette nodded once and vanished, dissolving into a wisp of dark smoke. Deep in the wastelands, the sun had fully set, plunging the ruined city into darkness. Kaelen and Leon had set up a small, smokeless camp inside the rusted hull of an overturned cargo truck. Leon was sitting cross-legged, munching on a stale protein bar he had found in Kaelen's stolen backpack. He was still buzzing with the energy of his rapid level-ups, his eyes scanning his status window constantly. Level 13, Leon muttered in disbelief. In one day, instructor at this rate, I'll be an A-rank equivalent in a week. Kaelen was sitting opposite him, calmly sharpening his combat knife with a whetstone. The rhythmic asterisk SHHHK asterisk sound was oddly soothing. Levels mean nothing if you don't understand the rules of the game, Leonidas, Kaelen said softly, pausing his sharpening. Tell me, what do you think the system is? Leon paused mid-bite. The system, it's a blessing, isn't it? It appeared 15 years ago to give humanity the tools to fight the monsters emerging from the dungeons. Kaelen let out a short, cynical laugh. It was a laugh devoid of any humor, carrying the weight of a man who had seen the end of the world. A blessing, Kaelen repeated, staring into the dark corner of the truck. Let me give you a piece of advice, Leon. Never trust a game you didn't buy. The Constellations, the beings running the system, they aren't our saviors, they are farmers. Leon frowned, lowering the protein bar. Farmers. Yes, humanity is the crop. The dungeons are the fertilizer. They give us power, they let us grow. They watch us struggle and bleed and level up. And when we are strong enough, when the world is saturated with enough mana. Kaelen's eyes grew incredibly dark. They harvest us. Leon felt a cold chill run down his spine. The absolute certainty in Kaelen's voice wasn't a conspiracy theory, it was a promise. How do you know this? Leon asked hesitantly. Kaelen didn't answer immediately. He couldn't tell the boy the truth. He couldn't say, I know this because I helped them do it in a previous timeline. Let's just say my class grants me unique insights into the underlying code of the system, Kaelen lied smoothly. That is why I took you. If the government or the guilds get you, they will groom you to be the ultimate protector. They will feed you EXP, make you strong, and parade you around. And when the harvest comes, you will be the first one the Constellations consume. Leon looked down at his hands, the golden aura now feeling less like a blessing and more like a glowing target painted on his back. So what do we do? Leon asked, looking up at his corrupt mentor. If the gods themselves are the enemy, how do we win? Kaelen resumed sharpening his knife. SHHHK. We don't play their game, Kaelen said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. We hack it, we break the rules. We use their own mechanics against them. And when they finally come down here to claim their prize, we will be waiting in the shadows with a handful of sand and a very sharp knife. Leon smiled, a fierce, defiant expression that looked incredibly out of place on a holy hero. I like that plan. Suddenly, Kaelen stopped sharpening the knife. The rhythmic sound ceased abruptly. He didn't move his head, but his eyes darted to the right. Leon, Kaelen said, his voice completely casual, as if he were asking about the weather. Do you remember the lesson about ambush tactics? Leon tensed, his hand slowly reaching for the hilt of his sword. Yes, instructor. Good, because we are currently being ambushed. Before Leon could even react, the roof of the cargo truck exploded inward. A figure clad entirely in black, moving with A-rank speed, dropped through the jagged hole. It was Silhouette. The assassin didn't say a word, he didn't monologue. He simply leveled a high-tech monosuppression pistol directly at Leon's chest and pulled the trigger. A silent, invisible wave of energy shot toward the boy. designed to instantly knock out any awakener below S rank. But it never reached him. Kaelen moved faster than the eye could follow. He didn't use a shield, he didn't cast a spell. He simply raised his left hand, his palm facing the incoming energy wave. A localized, dense vortex of pure shadow materialized in front of his hand, swallowing the suppression wave entirely. Silhouette froze, his featureless mask tilting slightly in absolute shock. A C-rank instructor had just nullified an A-rank suppression blast barehanded. Kaelen stood up slowly, the shadows in the truck seemingly elongating, twisting around his feet like loyal serpents. His dark eyes locked onto the assassin, glowing with a terrifying ancient malice. "Rude," Kaelen said softly, the temperature in the truck plummeting to freezing. "Didn't anyone teach you to knock before entering a classroom?" Oh man, the arch-villain is finally taking the gloves off. How is this A-rank assassin going to deal with a level 1 instructor who fights like a god? Find out in the next chapter of The Corrupted Mentor. Don't forget to comment your theories below and subscribe to the Fate Library. The silence inside the overturned cargo truck was deafening. Silhouette, the A-rank assassin of the Silver Lions Guild, stood frozen. His high-tech monosuppression pistol was still leveled, but the energy wave it fired had been completely devoured by the swirling vortex of localized shadow hovering just inches from Kaelen's palm. A C-rank instructor, that was what the dossier said, a nobody. But as Silhouette stared into Kaelen's bottomless, ancient eyes, every instinct he had honed over a decade of killing screamed at him to run. "Who are you?" Silhouette demanded, his artificially modulated voice losing its usual icy composure. He took a calculated half-step back, shifting his weight. Kaelen didn't answer immediately. He let the vortex of shadow dissipate, lowering his hand. The temperature in the truck continued to drop, frost beginning to form on the rusted metal walls. "I am the instructor currently teaching a class on ambush tactics," Kaelen said smoothly, adjusting his glasses. "And you, unfortunately, are the visual aid." Silhouette didn't hesitate. He was an A-rank. He didn't get this far by underestimating anomalies. He dropped the pistol, knowing it was useless against this shadow manipulation, and drew 2 vibro daggers from his thighs. The blades hummed with lethal, high-frequency energy. He lunged at Kaelen, moving at Mach 1. To Leon, who was watching from the corner, Silhouette was nothing but a black blur. But to Kaelen, the assassin was moving in slow motion. Kaelen's level 1 agility meant his physical body couldn't match Silhouette's speed. If those blades connected, Kaelen would be sliced into ribbons. But Kaelen didn't need to move his body. His max-level, absolute shadow mastery moved at the speed of thought. As Silhouette crossed the short distance, Kaelen simply blinked. Instantly, the shadows cast by the debris inside the truck surged upward like striking cobras. They wrapped around Silhouette's ankles, solidifying into adamantine-hard restraints. The assassin, moving at supersonic speed, was abruptly anchored to the floor. Physics took over. Silhouette's upper body continued forward while his legs were pinned, sending him violently crashing face-first into the rusted steel floor of the truck. The impact was loud enough to make Leon wince. Before Silhouette could recover, the shadows crept up his arms, pinning his wrists to the floor and forcing him to drop the vibro daggers. "You rely too much on your stats," Kaelen said, walking slowly toward the pinned assassin. His footsteps echoed loudly in the confined space. "You think because your agility is high, you dictate the pace of the battle. It's a common mistake among brute force awakeners." Silhouette struggled furiously, channeling his A-rank mana to break the shadow bindings. The dark tendrils groaned, straining under the sheer pressure of his energy. "It won't hold," Silhouette grunted, his aura flaring a bright, violent purple. "You're burning through your mana reserves. A C-rank can't hold me for more than 10 seconds. Kaelen stopped right in front of the struggling assassin and crouched down. He looked at his own glowing status window, which was invisible to everyone else. Mana 10/100. Warning, mana depletion imminent. Silhouette was right. Kaelen was level 1. His mana pool was pathetically small. The shadow bindings were about to shatter. "You're very observant," Kaelen whispered, a terrifying smile spreading across his face. "But 10 seconds is an eternity when you know exactly where to cut." Kaelen didn't use magic. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a simple, non-magical steel tactical pen. With surgical precision, Kaelen drove the pen directly into the small, unarmored gap at the base of Silhouette's neck, right where the stealth suit met the mask. He didn't hit an artery or a fatal organ. He hit a highly specific nerve cluster. Silhouette's body seized violently. The A-rank mana aura instantly fizzled out. His limbs went completely limp, his eyes rolling back beneath the mask. Kaelen released the shadow bindings, saving his last 10 points of mana. Silhouette didn't move. He was completely paralyzed from the neck down, gasping for air like a beached fish. "Anatomy, Leon," Kaelen said, standing up and casually wiping a drop of blood off the tactical pen. "It is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if an opponent has 1,000,000 points in vitality. If you sever the connection between the brain and the body, they are just a very durable piece of meat." Leon was staring in absolute awe. He had just watched a C-rank instructor effortlessly dismantle an A-rank assassin in less than 5 seconds without breaking a sweat. "Instructor," Leon breathed, "are you really C-rank?" "On paper, yes," Kaelen lied smoothly. "In practice, ranks are for people who play by the Constellations rules. Now come here, we have an interrogation to conduct." Leon approached nervously, looking down at the paralyzed assassin. Silhouette was breathing rapidly, panic evident in the slight twitching of his mask. "Who sent you?" Kaelen asked, his voice cold and commanding. "Silence." "A professional," Kaelen noted, sounding slightly bored. "Admirable, let's try a different approach." Kaelen crouched down again. "My absolute shadow mastery allows me to manipulate the absence of light, but it also allows me to manipulate the shadows inside a person. For example, the shadows cast by your internal organs." Silhouette's breathing hitched. "It's an incredibly delicate process," Kaelen continued, raising his hand. A tiny, needle-thin tendril of shadow materialized from his fingertip. "If I weave this into your chest cavity and gently squeeze your heart, it won't kill you, but it will simulate the exact physical sensation of a massive, ongoing heart attack. It is, I've been told, exquisitely painful." Leon swallowed hard, taking a step back. "Instructor! Is that really necessary? We caught him. We can just leave him here." Kaelen didn't look at Leon. He kept his eyes locked on Silhouette. "Leonidas, this man was sent to kidnap you. If he succeeded, do you know what his guild would do to you?" Leon hesitated. "Brainwash me." "They would break your mind," Kaelen corrected, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "They would drug you, strip away your personality, and rebuild you as an obedient attack dog. You wouldn't be a hero. You'd be a slave holding a glowing sword. This man was the delivery boy for your enslavement. Do not pity the wolf that tries to drag you to the slaughterhouse." The harsh truth of Kaelen's words hit Leon like a physical blow. The world wasn't a comic book. There were no jails for people like Silhouette. There was only survival. Leon's expression hardened. He nodded slowly. Kaelen turned back to the assassin. "I will ask one more time, who sent you?" "Varga," Silhouette rasped, his voice trembling. "Guild Master of the Silver Lions. He wants the boy alive." Kaelen nodded. He knew Varga, a brute of a man who would eventually try to monopolize the global dungeon economy before Kaelen had him assassinated in the previous timeline. "Thank you for your cooperation," Kaelen said. You promised not to torture me," Silhouette gasped. "I never promised anything," Kaelen smiled softly. "I merely explained a technique. However, you've been helpful, so I will grant you a swift exit, Leonidas." Leon stepped forward, his wooden practice sword glowing with holy aura. "The double tap," Kaelen instructed. "He has seen my face. He knows my capabilities. If he reports back to Varga, we lose our element of surprise. Do what needs to be done." Leon looked down at the paralyzed assassin. A week ago, the thought of taking a human life would have made him sick. But Kaelen's ruthless logic had taken root. If this man lived, Leon would never be free. Leon raised the glowing sword. "I'm sorry," he whispered. With a swift, precise strike, the holy aura severed the assassin's neck. Ding! You have participated in the elimination of a hostile A-rank awakener. Massive experience points gained. Level ups, level up, level up. You have reached level 16. New skill unlocked, aura concealment, Active allows the user to suppress their holy energy to avoid detection. Leon staggered slightly as the massive influx of stats rushed through his body. He was level 16 in less than 24 hours. Kaelen was already moving, expertly stripping the dead assassin of his gear. He tossed a high-tech utility belt, the 2 vibro daggers, and a stealth cloak to Leon. Looting, Kaelen said cheerfully. The most important part of any battle, your wooden sword won't survive another clash. Those daggers are B-rank artifacts. The cloak will help mask your heat signature. Put them on. Leon strapped the daggers to his thighs, a strange mix of guilt and adrenaline coursing through him. He was becoming exactly what Kaelen wanted, a pragmatic, ruthless survivor. If you are loving this darker take on the traditional hero's journey, hit that subscribe button. Welcome to the Fate Library, where we don't play fair. The next morning, the bruised sky of the wastelands offered very little light, but it was enough to see by. Kaelen and Leon had moved 3 miles deeper into the ruins, avoiding the patrols that the Silver Lions had undoubtedly sent after losing contact with Silhouette. Leon was practicing with the vibro daggers, his movements a blur of speed and precision thanks to his high agility and Kaelen's expert corrections. Your footwork is sloppy, Kaelen critiqued, sitting on a rusted oil drum and sipping from a canteen. You're stepping like a duelist, step like a thief, keep your weight on the balls of your feet. You aren't announcing your presence, you are arriving uninvited. Leon adjusted his stance, immediately feeling the difference. The movement was quieter, more explosive. Like this. Better, Kaelen nodded, but we have a problem, Leonidas. Leon stopped, spinning the daggers and sheathing them smoothly. What is it? We are currently fugitives, Kaelen stated the obvious. We have no money, no base of operations, and the strongest guild in the country is actively hunting us. We need resources, and we need them fast. So we rob a bank? Leon asked, half joking, but honestly, after yesterday, he wouldn't put it past his instructor. Too much exposure, Kaelen dismissed the idea. No, we are going to rob a dungeon. Leon frowned. A dungeon? But all the cleared dungeons are heavily guarded by guild outposts, and the uncleared ones are swarming with monsters. Ah, but you are thinking of the *registered dungeons, Kaelen smiled, standing up. The system is flawed, Leon. Sometimes dungeons spawn in isolated areas and go unnoticed by the satellite scanners for months. They fester, they mutate, and they hoard incredible loot. Kaelen knew this for a fact. In his previous life as the arch-villain, he had built his empire on the backs of hidden, unregistered dungeons. He knew exactly where the most lucrative ones were located in the early days of the apocalypse. There is an unregistered B-rank dungeon about 2 miles from here, Kaelen explained, pulling out a battered map and pointing to a spot marked Old Subway Line 7. It's an underground labyrinth, undead-type monsters, skeletons, ghouls, maybe a lick if we're lucky. It's packed with high-tier mana crystals and forgotten artifacts. Undead, Leon grinned, drawing one of the vibro daggers. His holy aura flared, turning the blade into a beacon of divine light. Instructor, my class was literally built to destroy the undead. They're weak to holy magic. Exactly, Kaelen said. It's the perfect grinding spot. We go in, you eradicate everything with extreme prejudice. We take the loot, and we sell it on the black market to fund our little rebellion. I'm ready, Leon said, his eyes shining with a terrifying enthusiasm. They set off, moving silently through the ruins, utilizing their concealment skills to avoid roaming monster packs. An hour later, they arrived at the entrance of Old Subway Line 7. The stairs leading down into the darkness were overgrown with sickly, pale fungus. A thick, oppressive miasma hung in the air, smelling of rot and ancient dust. The system notification popped up instantly as they crossed the threshold. Warning, you are entering an unregistered B-rank dungeon, the catacombs of the Forgotten Lord. Kaelen signaled for Leon to halt. He crept forward, peering down the dark stairwell. Someone was already there. Standing in front of the massive, sealed stone doors that led into the main labyrinth was a young man, probably a few years older than Leon. He wore a ragged, black trench coat, and his hands were glowing with a sickening, purple necrotic energy as he tried to pry the heavy doors open. Kaelen recognized him immediately. It was Silas Thorne. In the previous timeline, Silas became known as the Plague Doctor, an S-rank necromancer, and one of Kaelen's most loyal and terrifying lieutenants in the villainous empire. Silas had slaughtered thousands with his undead plagues. Right now, however, Silas was just a struggling, low-level necromancer trying to crack open a dungeon he wasn't strong enough to clear. Kaelen felt a slow, wicked grin spread across his face. The universe was simply handing him all the puzzle pieces. He didn't have to kill his former allies. He could recruit them early and mold them into the perfect, ruthless support team for his golden boy. "Instructor," Leon whispered, stepping up beside Kaelen. "Who is that? Should we attack?" "No, Leonidas," Kaelen whispered back, his eyes gleaming with dark amusement. "That is not an enemy, that is our new porter. Let's go introduce ourselves." Oh man, the gang is starting to assemble. What happens when the holy hero teams up with a future villainous necromancer, all guided by a corrupted mentor? Drop your predictions in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe to the Fate Library for Chapter 5. The stale, stagnant air of the subway entrance clung to the walls like an invisible web. Down in the gloom, Silas Thorn cursed under his breath. He channeled his necrotic mana, his hands glowing with a sickly, bruised purple light, and slammed them against the massive stone doors sealing the B-rank dungeon. Nothing happened. The doors didn't even vibrate. "Useless," Silas muttered, kicking the stone in frustration. He was 20 years old, dressed in a tattered black trench coat that had seen better days and completely broke. He had awakened the necromancer class a week ago. In the movies, necromancers were terrifying lords of death. In reality, being a level 4 necromancer meant he could barely animate a dead rat for 5 minutes before running out of mana. Guilds had laughed him out of their recruitment offices, calling his class unhygienic and creepy. Desperate for funds, he had tracked down this unregistered dungeon, hoping to sneak in and steal some low-level artifacts. "You're applying the mana to the kinetic seal, not the locking mechanism." A smooth, authoritative voice echoed down the concrete stairwell. "If you push necrotic energy into a ward designed to repel kinetic force, you are essentially trying to unlock a door by punching it." Silas spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. He raised his glowing hands defensively. 2 figures were descending the stairs. One was a tall, sharp-featured man in a slightly dusty suit, his eyes hidden behind wire-rimmed glasses. The other was a blonde teenager wearing a stealth cloak, carrying 2 high-tech vibro daggers and a wooden practice sword that looked entirely out of place. "Who the hell are you?" Silas demanded, trying to sound intimidating. He concentrated, attempting to summon his only minion, a fragile skeleton he had reanimated from a stray dog. A pile of bones rattled on the floor behind him, assembled into a shaky canine form, and immediately fell apart into a heap of dust. Silas flushed with embarrassment. Kaelen Vance didn't laugh. He simply walked down the remaining stairs, his footsteps making 0 sound. He stopped a few feet from Silas, looking the young man up and down. "Silas Thorn," Kaelen said, his voice calm and terrifyingly knowledgeable. "Awakened exactly 7 days ago. Denied entry into 4 major guilds, currently struggling to afford basic mana potions, hence your attempt to rob a B-rank crypt." Silas took a step back, his back hitting the stone doors. "Are you with the government? If you are, I haven't done anything illegal. Unregistered dungeons are finders keepers." "I am not with the government," Kaelen smiled softly. "I am an instructor, and this is my disciple, Leonidas. We are here to clear this dungeon." "Clear it?" Silas scoffed, looking at Kaelen's unassuming attire and Leon's wooden sword. "This is a B-rank zone. It's crawling with undead. You two will be torn apart in 5 minutes." "I appreciate your concern for our safety," Kaelen said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, glittering blue gem, a high-purity mana crystal he had looted from the assassin, Silhouette. He tossed it casually to Silas. Silas fumbled and caught it. His eyes widened. A crystal of this purity was worth at least $10,000 on the open market. "That is your signing bonus," Kaelen stated. "I have a proposition for you, Mr. Thorn. My disciple is a highly efficient combatant, but he lacks inventory space. We require a porter, someone to carry the loot, watch our flanks, and occasionally provide utility magic." "A porter," Silas sneered. "I'm a necromancer. I command the dead. I don't carry bags." "You command dead rats," Kaelen corrected him without malice. "But your subclass is Plague Doctor, isn't it? Your necrotic energy specializes in decay, rust, and debuffs, rather than raw reanimation. Silas froze. How did this random guy in a suit know his hidden subclass? He hadn't told a single soul. If you agree to carry our bags, Kaelen continued, his voice dropping to a persuasive, silken whisper, I will not only give you a 20% cut of the total dungeon haul, but I will also allow you to harvest the corpses of the high-tier monsters we kill. Imagine reanimating a B-rank skeleton knight instead of a stray dog. Imagine the guilds begging for your services. Silas looked at the incredibly valuable mana crystal in his hand, then at the sealed doors, and finally at Kaelen. It was a deal with the devil, and Silas knew it, but the devil paid well. Fine, Silas muttered, pocketing the crystal, but if things go south, I'm running. I would expect nothing less, Kaelen smiled. He stepped up to the massive stone doors. He didn't use mana, he didn't cast a spell. He simply analyzed the archaic runes carved into the stone, found the structural weak point, and drove the heel of his palm into a specific indentation. Crack! The ancient locking mechanism shattered, and the heavy stone doors groaned open, releasing a cloud of freezing, foul-smelling air. Leonidas, Kaelen said, stepping aside, you're up. The dream team is officially formed. If you're excited to see this twisted dynamic in action, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Fate Library. Let's head into the crypt. The interior of the catacombs was a massive, subterranean labyrinth carved from obsidian. The walls were lined with alcoves containing ancient, rusted sarcophagi. Silas walked in the back, carrying the heavy tactical backpack, his eyes darting nervously at every shadow. Kaelen strolled casually in the middle, his hands in his pockets, analyzing the architecture. Leon took the vanguard, his vibro dagger sheathed, holding his wooden sword in a two-handed grip. Instructor, I sense movement ahead, Leon whispered, his holy aura naturally detecting the presence of unholy entities. A welcoming committee, Kaelen noted. Don't hold back, Leon. Let Mr. Thorne see why we hired him. From the darkness ahead, the unmistakable sound of rattling armor and dragging footsteps echoed through the corridor. A horde of skeleton warriors emerged from the gloom. There were at least 30 of them, wielding rusted broadswords and clad in decaying chainmail. Their eye sockets burned with malevolent blue fire. Monster, skeleton warrior. Rank C. Silas let out a panicked yelp, dropping the bag. 30 C ranks, are you insane? We need to run. Leon didn't run. He took a deep breath, his golden aura flaring to life. The divine light illuminated the dark corridor like a miniature sun. Holy slash, Leon said calmly. He didn't swing the sword in a massive arc this time. Instead, he channeled the holy energy into a concentrated point at the tip of the wooden blade and thrust forward. A beam of pure, blinding light shot down the corridor, piercing the center of the skeletal horde. The skeletons didn't even have time to raise their rusted shields. The holy magic acted like acid to their unholy existence. The entire center column of the horde instantly disintegrated into white ash. But there were still 20 skeletons flanking them on the sides, closing in fast. Too slow, Leonidas, Kaelen critiqued calmly from behind. They're flanking, crowd control. Leon nodded. He didn't swing again. He reached into one of the pouches on his new utility belt. He pulled out a small glass vial filled with crushed sun crystals, a cheap, low-level material he had gathered earlier. He infused the vial with a massive burst of his holy aura and hurled it at the ceiling directly above the remaining skeletons. Cover your eyes, Leon shouted. Silas threw his arms over his face. Kaelen simply blinked, his shadow mastery filtering the light. The vial shattered, detonating with the intensity of a holy flashbang. The explosion of divine light didn't just blind the undead, it flash-fried their necrotic tethers. The skeletons shrieked, a sound like grinding glass, as their bones cracked and splintered under the intense holy pressure. While the undead were paralyzed and burning from the light, Leon darted forward. He moved like a shadow, weaving through the disorganized ranks. He didn't bother using heavy slashes. He used the butt of his sword to shatter kneecaps, and as the skeletons fell, he used the vibro daggers to sever their spinal columns with surgical precision. In less than a minute, it was over. 30 C-rank monsters had been reduced to piles of dust and shattered bone. You have slain 30 ex-skeleton warriors. Level up. You have reached level 18. Silas slowly lowered his arms, his jaw practically hitting the floor. He stared at the teenager standing amidst the carnage, the golden aura slowly retracting into his body. What is he? Silas stammered, looking at Kaelen in absolute terror. He's a mythic, but he fights like an alleyway mugger. He is pragmatic, Kaelen corrected gently. Now pick up the bag, Mr. Thorne, and collect the intact mana cores from the dust. We have a boss to kill. The trio descended deeper into the catacombs, easily wiping out several more hordes of undead. Leon's leveling speed was astronomical. By the time they reached the massive, iron-wrought doors of the boss room, he was level 22. Kaelen stopped before the doors. Listen closely, both of you. A B-rank dungeon boss is not a mindless drone. It will possess basic intelligence, high defensive stats, and likely an area of effect attack. Silas, what is your role? Stay in the back, don't die, and try not to wet myself. Silas recited the rules Kaelen had established earlier. And your secondary role? Kaelen prompted. Silas swallowed hard. If the armor is too thick for Leon to cut, I use my plague of rust to weaken the joints. Excellent, Kaelen nodded. Leonidas, what is your role? Aggro the boss, avoid direct damage, and look for an opening to apply the pocket sand before striking the killing blow, Leon said with absolute seriousness. Perfect, Kaelen smiled. Let's begin. Kaelen pushed the iron doors open. The boss room was a massive, circular cavern, illuminated by braziers burning with eerie blue fire. In the center of the room sat a massive throne of bone, and upon that throne rested the Forgotten Lord. It was an A-rank undead knight, easily 12 feet tall, clad in massive, impenetrable black plate armor. It wielded a greatsword the size of a surfboard, completely caked in dried blood. Boss monster, the Forgotten Lord. Rank A. Warning, high threat level detected. The Lord's eye slits flared with crimson fire as it slowly stood up from the throne. The sheer pressure of its aura made Silas drop to one knee, gasping for air. Even Leon felt a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. Intruders, a hollow, echoing voice grated from the knight's helmet. Your flesh shall feed the earth. The Forgotten Lord lunged with terrifying speed, bringing the massive greatsword crashing down toward Leon. Leon didn't try to block. He rolled to the side, the greatsword smashing into the stone floor and creating a massive crater that sent debris flying like shrapnel. His armor is too thick, Leon yelled, dodging a sweeping backhand that clipped his shoulder, sending him tumbling across the room. The holy aura isn't penetrating deep enough. Silas, Kaelen barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. Now. Silas, trembling violently, pointed his hands at the massive knight. He channeled every ounce of his necrotic mana into his subclass skill. Plague of rust, Silas screamed. A sickly green mist erupted from his hands, washing over the Forgotten Lord. The knight didn't take any physical damage, but the ancient black armor began to hiss and bubble. The pristine, impenetrable plates rapidly oxidized, turning brittle and orange at the joints. Leonidas, Kaelen yelled. Leon was already moving. He sprinted toward the knight, avoiding a clumsy, weakened swing of the greatsword. As he slid under the beast's guard, he reached into his pouch. But this wasn't ordinary pocket sand. Before entering the dungeon, Leon had infused the iron filings with his holy aura. Eat this, Leon shouted, hurling the glowing, holy sand directly up into the rusted, brittle visor of the knight's helmet. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The holy particles detonated inside the helmet, blinding the undead lord and searing its necrotic core. The knight dropped its greatsword, clawing blindly at its face with massive armored gauntlets. Finish it, Kaelen commanded. Leon channeled every single drop of mana in his body into his wooden sword. He leaped off the knight's knee, launching himself into the air, perfectly aligned with the rusted, weakened gap in the armor at the back of the neck. Holy severance! The blade struck true. The rusted armor shattered like glass, and the concentrated holy energy sheared through the necrotic spine. The massive head of the Forgotten Lord hit the floor with a heavy thud, its red eyes flickering out instantly. The colossal armored body remained standing for a second before collapsing into a mountain of dust and rusted metal. You have slain the A-rank boss, the Forgotten Lord. Dungeon cleared. Massive experience points gained. Level up X5. You have reached level 27. Silence returned to the cavern. Leon collapsed onto his back, completely exhausted, his mana pool entirely depleted. Silas was curled in a fetal position near the entrance, hyperventilating. Kaelen calmly walked to the center of the dust pile. He reached down and retrieved a massive, pulsing purple gem the size of a softball. The dungeon core, it was worth hundreds of millions. Excellent work, both of you, Kaelen said, tossing the core to a bewildered Silas. Bag it, we have the funds we need. Kaelen led the exhausted duo out of the dungeon, the massive stone doors crumbling into dust behind them, signifying the labyrinth's collapse. Instructor, Leon panted, leaning heavily on Silas, who was struggling to carry the massive backpack of loot. Where do we go now? The black market. Eventually, Kaelen said, his eyes narrowing as they emerged back into the bruised light of the wastelands. He stopped, holding up a hand. The air outside the subway entrance was thick with tension. The silence of the wastelands had been replaced by the hum of heavy machinery and the crackle of localized comms. Kaelen looked up. Standing on the ruined overpasses and rubble piles surrounding the entrance were over 200 heavily armed hunters. They wore the silver and blue insignias of the Silver Lions Guild. And standing at the forefront, leaning on a massive warhammer that crackled with lightning, was Guild Master Varga himself, an S-rank behemoth. Varga looked down at Kaelen, Leon, and Silas. A dark, terrifying smile spread across his scarred face. You caused a massive mana flare when you killed the boss, Instructor. Varga's voice boomed over the ruins, echoing with lethal promise. You made yourselves a beacon. Now hand over the mythic boy and I will only break your legs. Kaelen didn't panic. He didn't even flinch. He slowly adjusted his glasses, staring up at the S-rank guild master, and let out a soft, dark chuckle. Leonidas, Kaelen whispered, the shadows around his feet beginning to twist and writhe. Are you too tired for one more lesson? Oh, it is on. The Silver Lions brought an army, but Kaelen is about to show them why you never corner a villain in the shadows. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and stay tuned to the Fate Library for the explosive finale. The air in the wastelands was thick, suffocating beneath the crushing pressure of an S-rank aura. Guildmaster Varga stood atop a ruined overpass, looking down at the trio with the arrogance of a god gazing at mortals. Surrounding the cratered entrance of the collapsed dungeon were 200 elite hunters from the Silver Lions Guild. Mages were charging offensive spells, snipers had high-caliber mana rifles trained on Leon's head, and heavy tanks stood ready with tower shields. Silas Thorne dropped the heavy backpack of loot. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the dirt, hyperventilating. We're dead, the necromancer whimpered, clutching his head. 200 elites and an S-rank, it's over. I should have never taken that crystal. Leon was swaying on his feet. His mana pool was completely drained from the fight with the Forgotten Lord. His muscles screamed in protest as he forced himself to stand straight, gripping the hilt of his wooden sword, which was now cracked and splintering. Instructor, Leon gasped, his blue eyes locked on Varga. I don't have enough mana for a holy slash, not even a small one. Kaelen Vance stood between his two disciples and the army. He wasn't panting. He wasn't sweating. He casually adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, looking completely out of place in his dusty, standard-issue academy suit. I know, Leonidas, Kaelen said softly, his voice a calm oasis in the middle of a raging storm. You have done exceptionally well today. You fought, you learned, and you survived, but you are exhausted. Varga laughed, the sound booming over the ruins like thunder. How touching, the C-rank instructor playing the protective father figure. Listen to me, Vance. You got lucky catching Silhouette off guard, but this isn't an assassination, this is an execution. Varga pointed his crackling warhammer directly at Kaelen. I am going to crush every bone in your body, drag you back to soul, and heal you just so I can break them again. The boy comes with us. The necromancer dies. Silas let out a pathetic squeak. Leon gritted his teeth, stepping forward to shield Kaelen. You have to go through me first. Kaelen placed a gentle, firm hand on Leon's shoulder, stopping the boy in his tracks. No, Leon, Kaelen said. his voice dropping an octave, losing every ounce of its former warmth. A hero must know when to fight, when to use pocket sand, and when to retreat. But most importantly, Kaelen stepped past Leon, walking slowly toward the army of 200 hunters. A hero must know when to sit back and let the villain go to work. Varga sneered, raising his hand to signal the snipers. Fire. 3 high-caliber mono-rounds, designed to pierce tank armor, erupted from the sniper rifles positioned on the surrounding rooftops. They tore through the air at supersonic speeds, aimed directly at Kaelen's chest and head. Kaelen didn't dodge, he didn't even blink. Absolute shadow mastery. The shadows cast by Kaelen's own feet suddenly surged upward, solidifying into a pitch black, jagged wall just inches from his face. The sniper rounds struck the shadow wall and stopped dead, suspended in the darkness like flies caught in amber. Varga's eyes widened. What the? Kaelen snapped his fingers. The suspended bullets reversed trajectory. They shot back with twice the kinetic energy, screaming through the air and instantly shattering the scopes of the 3 snipers, knocking them unconscious before they could even pull the trigger a second time. That's not C-rank magic, Varga growled, his S-rank instinct suddenly screaming at him. Mages, suppressive fire. 50 mages in the backline began chanting, their hands glowing with fire, ice, and lightning. You rely on stats, Kaelen's voice echoed, not from his mouth, but from every single shadow in the wasteland simultaneously. The sound was disorienting, demonic, and terrifying. You rely on the system to dictate your strength. You think a high level makes you a god. Kaelen raised both of his hands, his fingers curling like the claws of a predator. But the system is just code, Kaelen whispered, and shadows are older than code. The ambient light in the wastelands suddenly vanished. It wasn't that the sun had set. It was as if the concept of light itself had been violently murdered. The shadows cast by the rubble, the cars, and the hunters themselves suddenly grew, expanding exponentially until they swallowed the entire plaza in an ocean of absolute, suffocating darkness. The mages stopped chanting. Their glowing spells were instantly snuffed out, suffocated by the dense, unnatural dark. Panic erupted among the silver lions. I can't see. Where is he? Form up, shield wall. Silas and Leon were standing in a small pocket of normal light directly behind Kaelen. They watched in absolute horror and awe as the shadows of the silver lion hunters came alive. Kaelen wasn't casting spells. He didn't have the mana for it. He was manipulating the fundamental concept of darkness. Kill the corrupted, Kaelen commanded the shadows. The massacre was silent and ruthlessly efficient. The shadows cast by the hunters' own armor and weapons elongated, wrapping around their throats and limbs. Men and women were hoisted into the air by their own silhouettes, their weapons stripped from their hands. Kaelen didn't kill all of them. He only targeted the ones whose auras reeked of innocent blood. The ones he knew from his previous life were murderers, extorters, and rapists hiding behind the shiny badge of the Silver Lions Guild. For them, the shadows acted as guillotines, cleanly snapping their necks in the dark. For the others, the regular foot soldiers just following orders, the shadows simply crushed their kneecaps or paralyzed their mana pathways, leaving them writhing and groaning on the ground. In less than 60 seconds, an army of 200 elite hunters was completely neutralized. Not a single spell had been cast, not a single drop of Kaelen's mana had been spent. Only Varga remained standing. The guild master was breathing heavily, his S-rank aura flaring violently, coating his entire body in jagged blue lightning. The intense electrical light was barely enough to push back the oppressive shadows encroaching on him. Varga looked around at his decimated army. His elite guild, the pride of South Korea, was gone. Erased by a junior academy instructor in a cheap suit. You, Varga stammered, his arrogance completely shattered, replaced by primal terror. You're a monster, you're an anomaly. I have been called many things, Kaelen said, walking slowly out of the darkness and into the flickering blue light of Varga's aura. But monster is a bit reductive. With a furious roar, Varga charged. He channeled every ounce of his S-rank power into his war hammer, leaping into the air. Die. The hammer came down with the force of a meteor, aimed directly at Kaelen's head. Kaelen finally checked his status window. Mana 10/100. He couldn't block an S-rank strike with shadows alone. He didn't have the raw energy. But he didn't need to. Warning, user is manually bypassing system restrictions. Unsealing, taboo arts blood magic. Kaelen didn't use his mana. He used the ambient life force of the 20 corrupt hunters he had just executed. A crimson mist rose from the fallen bodies in the darkness, swirling toward Kaelen at blinding speed. The blood coalesced into a crystalline, ruby-red shield just inches above Kaelen's head. Varga's lightning-infused hammer slammed into the blood shield. Boom! The shockwave shattered the concrete for 100 yards in every direction. The sound was deafening, forcing Leon and Silas to cover their ears. But the shield didn't break, it didn't even crack. Varga stared at the shield in disbelief, suspended in midair. Impossible. Blood is thicker than lightning, Varga, Kaelen said softly. Kaelen reached up, bypassing the shield, and placed his bare hand directly on the center of Varga's armored chest. Drain. The taboo art activated. Varga's eyes rolled back into his head as his S-rank mana was violently siphoned out of his core, ripped from his body and absorbed into the blood shield. The guild master screamed, a horrific gurgling sound as his lightning aura flickered and died completely. Kaelen released his grip. Varga dropped to the ground, his armor clattering loudly against the concrete. The massive, towering S-rank guildmaster was reduced to a shriveled, gasping husk, his mana core completely shattered. He would never use magic again. The shadows slowly began to recede, returning the wastelands to their natural, bruised twilight. Kaelen stood over Varga, adjusting his glasses. He looked perfectly pristine, completely untouched by the carnage around him. "Send a message to your government contacts, Varga," Kaelen said, his voice cold and commanding. "Send a message to the other guilds. Tell them that the Holy Sword is under new management. If anyone, be it a human, a monster, or a constellation, tries to claim him, I will personally drown their entire lineage in shadows." Kaelen leaned down, placing a single finger on Varga's forehead. A dark brand seared itself into the man's flesh. "You will remember the fear," Kaelen whispered. "But if you ever try to speak my name or describe my face, this curse will boil your blood. You were defeated by the shadows. That is all they need to know." Varga could only nod, tears of agony and terror streaming down his face. Kaelen turned his back on the broken guild master and walked back toward his disciples. Silas was plastered against the side of the truck, staring at Kaelen as if he were looking at the devil himself. Leon was standing tall, his eyes wide, processing the absolute slaughter he had just witnessed. "Instructor," Leon breathed, What are you?" Kaelen stopped in front of the boy. The terrifying aura of the Shadow Monarch vanished completely, replaced by the mild-mannered, slightly sarcastic junior instructor. "I am someone who refuses to let the system dictate our fate, Leonidas," Kaelen said, putting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "The Constellations wanted a righteous hero to play their game. They wanted a pawn. I am going to make you a king." Leon looked at the ruined army, the shattered S-rank guild master, and then at the small pouch of pocket sand still strapped to his belt. He didn't feel fear. He felt safe. For the first time since the awakening stone glowed, Leon realized he wasn't a target anymore. He was the weapon, and Kaelen was the one wielding it. So Leon smiled, a genuine, slightly unhinged expression. "What's the next lesson?" Kaelen chuckled, looking up at the bruised sky. High above, hidden behind the cosmic veil, the constellations were undoubtedly panicking. The timeline was broken, the hero was corrupted, and the arch-villain was back in charge. "The next lesson, Leonidas," Kaelen smiled, "is how to launder a B-rank dungeon core on the black market without paying taxes." Silas let out a miserable groan. "I'm going to jail, I'm going to super jail." "Only if you drop the bag, Mr. Thorne," Kaelen said, leading the way into the wasteland. "Keep up." And that concludes our massive epic, The Corrupted Mentor. Kaelen has successfully broken the timeline, turned the holy hero into a tactical menace, and completely traumatized an entire S-rank guild. If you want to see a part 2 where Kaelen and Leon take on the black market, the demons, and eventually the gods themselves, smash that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Fate Library. Until next time, stay in the shadows.